Part 1 of Two American Slavery Documents. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by David Wales. Two American Slavery Documents by Various. Part 1. Life of James Mars, a Slave Born and Sold in Connecticut, by James Mars. To whom it may concern. These will certify that the bearer, Deacon James Mars, has been known to me and to the citizens of this town for a long period of years as an honest, upright, truthful man, a good citizen, an officer in his church, and a man whose life and character have gained the approbation, the esteem, and the good wishes of all who know him. Born a slave, the good providence of God has long since made him free, and, I trust, also taught him that where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Jonathan Todd, Pittsfield, Massachusetts, June 23, 1868. Introduction. When I made up my mind to write this story, it was not to publish it, but it was at the request of my sister that lived in Africa, and has lived there more than 30 years. She had heard our parents tell about our being slaves, but she was not born until a number of years after they were free. When the war in which we had been engaged began, the thought came to her mind that her parents and brothers and sisters were once slaves, and she wrote to me from Africa for the story. I came to Norfolk on a visit at the time the war broke out, and some in Norfolk remember that I was once a slave. They asked me about it. I told them something about it. They seemed to take an interest in it, and as I was in Norfolk now, and having an opportunity to write it, I thought I would write it all through. In telling it to those, there were a great many things that I did not mention that I have written. After I had written it out, I saw that my brother and my other sister would think that I might give them the same, and my children had often asked me to write it. When I had got it written, as it made more writing than I was willing to undertake, to give each of them one, I thought I would have it printed, and perhaps I might sell enough to pay the expenses, as many of the people now on the stage of life do not know that slavery ever lived in Connecticut. End of letter and introduction. A Slave Born and Sold in Connecticut. The treatment of slaves was different at the North from the South. At the North they were admitted to be a species of the human family. I was told when a slave boy that some of the people said that slaves had no souls, and that they would never go to heaven, let them do ever so well. My father was born in the state of New York, I think in Columbia County. He had, I think, 3 different masters in that state, one by the name of Van Epps, and he was General Van Rensselaer's slave in the time of the Revolution, and was a soldier in that war. He was then owned by a man whose name was Rutzer, and then was owned in Connecticut, in Salisbury, and then by the minister in North Canaan. My mother was born in Old Virginia, in Loudoun County. I do not remember the name of the town. The minister of North Canaan, whose name was Thompson, went to Virginia for a wife, or she came to him. In some way they got together so that they became man and wife. He removed her to Canaan, and she brought her slaves with her, and my mother was one of them. I think there were 2 of my mother's brothers also. The Reverend Mr. Thompson, as he was then called, bought my father, and he was married to my mother by him. Mr. Thompson ministered to the people of Canaan in holy things. His slaves worked his farm. For a short time things went on very well. But soon the North and the South, as now, fell out. The South must rule, and after a time the North would not be ruled. The minister's wife told my father if she only had him South, where she could have at her call a half-dozen men, she would have him stripped and flogged until he was cut in strings, and see if he would do as she bid him. She told him, "You mind, boy, I will have you there yet, and you will get your pay for all that you've done." My father was a man of considerable muscular strength, and was not easily frightened into obedience. I have heard my mother say she has often seen her mother tied up and whipped until the blood ran across the floor in the room where she was tied and whipped. Well, as I said, the South and the North could not agree. The South seceded and left the North. The minister's wife would not live North, and she and her husband picked up and went South, and left my father and mother in Canaan to work the farm, and they lived on the farm until I was 8 years old. My mother had one child when she came from the South. I was the first she had after she was married. They had 5 children born in Canaan. 3 died in infancy. I was born March 3rd, 1790. Mr. Thompson used to come up from Virginia and talk about our going South. He would pat me on the head and tell me what a fine boy I was. Once, when he was in Canaan, he asked me if I would not like to go with him and drive the carriage for my mistress. He said if I would go, he would give me 25 cents, or, as it was then called, 25 coppers. I told him I wanted the money first. He gave me a quarter, and then I would not agree to go, and he put me in the oven. That I did not like, and when I got out I would not give him the money, but his business I did not yet know. He had come to sell his farm, and to take us all South. My father said he would not go alive. The minister told him he must go. My father said he never would. Well, the man that had formerly ministered to the people in holy things sold the farm, and stock, and tools, and effects, with a few exceptions. He kept a pair of horses and harness, a wagon, a bed, and a few such articles. The harness and wagon he kept to take us to the South with. After he sold his place, he took us all to a wealthy friend of his, until he had settled up all his affairs, so as to show to the world that he was an honest and upright man. He would have them think that he feared God, and let alone evil, for he was born or raised in the state of New York, and had taught the people of New Canaan the way to do, as you will see, for in former days he spoke to the people from the pulpit morally, and they thought much of the man. He had taught them slavery was right, and that the great Almighty God had sanctioned the institution, and he would practice it. He now made his arrangements to set out on his journey. The day was fixed to leave his much-loved people and home for his Southern home, where he had obtained a new home and friends and acquaintances. My father, although a slave without education, was intensely watching the movements of the teacher of the people, but kept all that he saw to himself, yet he was steadily planning his escape. The set day had now within about 36 hours come. All went on well with the man from the South. He had had no thought but all was well. Those fine chattels were his, and would fetch him in a Southern market, at a moderate estimate, $2,000. They would furnish him pocket change for some time, and also his loving wife could have a chance to wreak her vengeance on my father for what she called disobedience. It was a matter of doubt with my father what course to take, how he could get away with his family, the best and safest; whether to go to Massachusetts, which joined Canaan on the north, or to Norfolk, which joined Canaan on the east. Very fortunately for us, there was at that time an unpleasant feeling existing between the two towns, or the inhabitants of Canaan and Norfolk. He said that the people of Canaan would side with their former pastor, and he found that the people of Norfolk would take sides against Canaan and their pastor. Then he thought the best that he could do would be to take his family to Norfolk, where they would be the safest. He concluded to take them to Norfolk, but how was he to get them there, with what he wanted to take with them? He came to the conclusion that the horses he had for a long time driven might as well help him now in this hour of distress as not. He got a colored man to help him that was stout and healthy. They hitched up the parson's team, put on board what few things he had and his family in the still of a dark night, for it was very dark, and started for Norfolk, and on the way we run afoul of a man's wood-pile, for it was so dark that he could not see the road. but we got off from the woodpile without harm, and arrived in Norfolk about 1 o'clock. I think we stopped at a tavern kept by Mr. G. Pettibone, and in him we found a friend. We unloaded what we had, and father and the man that was with him took the team back to Canaan, so that the parson might set out on his journey and not have to wait for his team, and father returned to where he had left his family. He felt that he had done all for the parson that he well could, for he had taken away his family off from his hands, so that the parson would be relieved from the care that must necessarily occur in such a long journey with a family on his hands to see to. And my father thought that the parson's old Jewel would be relieved from some of her pardoned habits, and from a promise she had so often made to him when she got him south. Well, how the parson felt when he had got himself out of bed and found that he was left to pursue his journey alone, the reader can tell as well as I, for he was a big and bristle man, but I will leave him for a while, and see what is to be done with us. It was soon known in the morning that we were in Norfolk. The first inquiry was, where will they be safe? The place was soon found. There was a man by the name of Phelps that had a house that was not occupied. It was out of the way and out of sight. After breakfast, we went to the house. It was well located. It needed some cleaning, and that my mother could do as well as the next woman. We all went to work and got it cleaned, and the next day went into it and stopped some time. Father did what work he could get out of the way, where he would not be seen, and it was necessary for him to keep out of sight, for Norfolk was the thoroughfare to Hartford. Days and weeks passed on, and we began to feel quite happy, hoping that the parson had gone south, as we heard nothing from him. At length we heard that he said he would have the 2 boys at all hazards. It was thought best that the boys should be away. So one dark night we heard that the parson was coming out with his men to find the boys, for have them he would. A man that lived near to us said he would take the boys where they would be safe. His name was Cady. It was agreed on, and he went with us over a mountain, over rocks and logs. It was very rough and steep, and the night was so dark that we could only see when it lightened. At last we got through the woods on the top of what is called Burr Mountain. We could look down on low grounds and see logs that were laid for the road across the meadow. At every flash they could be seen, but when it did not lighten we could not see anything. We kept on. Our pilot knew the way. At last we arrived at the place. The name of the family was Tibbles. The family consisted of an old man, a middle-aged man, and his wife and 4 children, and a very pleasant family it was. We had not been there long before it was thought best that my brother should be still more out of the way, as he was about 6 years older than I, which made him an object of greater search, and they were at a loss where to send him, as he was then about 14 years of age. There was a young man by the name of Butler, from Massachusetts. He was in Norfolk at the time studying law. He said he would take him home with him, and he did so, as I supposed, and I saw him no more for more than 2 years. I stopped with the family a few days, and then went home, or what I called home. It was where my parents and sister were. I found them very lonely. I had not been home many days before our quiet was disturbed, for the parson had his hunters out to find our whereabouts. He somehow found where we were. My sister and myself were at play out at the door. We saw 2 men in the woods, a little from the house, coming very fast, and they came into the house. My father was not far from the house. Mother was in the house. The men were Captain Phelps, the man who owned the house, and Mr. Butler, the law student. They told us that we must now say whether we would go with the parson or not, and we must decide quick, for the parson was coming, and he would soon be on the spot, and there was no time to lose. Mother had said she was not unwilling to go herself if it was not for father and the children, and the parson had made her such promises that she was somewhat inclined to go. The parson talked so fair to her, he beguiled her, I suppose, somewhat as our first mother was beguiled in the garden. The beguilers were both, I do not say preachers, but they were both deceivers, and he talked so smooth to mother that he beguiled her. He told her if she would go to Canaan and see to his things and pack them up for him, then if she did not want to go, she need not. Mother talked with father. He did not incline to go, but finally he consented. The parson ordered a wagon, and it was soon on the spot. But where was Joseph? He was not here. "I want him to go with us, that we may be all together," said the parson. Father saw what the parson's plan was. He told him the boy was on the way. He could get him when we got to Canaan. I should have said that those two men that came to tell us that the parson was coming hid in the barn before the parson arrived, and were not seen by him. They had a few words with my father while the parson went for his team. We set off for Canaan, and in the land of Canaan we arrived that day. "Where is Joseph?" Father said he would go for him the next day, in the morning or in the day. Father went, as the parson supposed, for Joseph. The parson was loading. Mother was packing. All was now going on well. Night came, and when all was still, for father had told someone it would be late before he got back, he came and took the parson's horses, and took mother and the two children on horseback, and instead of going south, went to Norfolk, and got there about 2 o'clock in the morning. We stopped at a tavern kept by Captain Lawrence. The horses were sent back for the parson, for he said he should start the next day. But it seemed that he did not start for Old Virginia, for we often heard of him after that day. We stopped with Captain Lawrence a few days. It was thought best by our friends that we should not all be together, for it was found that the parson was still in the land and on the lookout for us. I was sent to a woman in the neighborhood by the name of Darby, a poor woman. I stopped with her a few days, with instructions to keep still. The old lady had but one room in her house. You may wonder why I was sent to such a place. Most likely it was thought she had so little room that she would not be suspected of harboring a fugitive. A man by the name of Walter lived nearby. He was in the habit of coming in to see how his boy did, as he called me. He told me when anyone came there I must get under the bed. I used to sit in the corner of the room so that I should not be seen from the window. I stayed there a number of days. I do not now remember how many. One day I ventured to take a peep through the keyhole. The door was locked. Someone came to the door. I made a bound and then a roll, and I was out of sight. The door was opened, and it was my friend, Mr. Walter. He was quite amused to hear the performance. He said he would take me with him the next day. He was going to work in a back lot where it would be out of sight. So the next day I went with him. It was quite a treat. At noon we ate our dinner in the field. That was new to me. After dinner Mr. Walter lay down on the ground. He told me he should go to sleep, and I must keep a lookout to see if anyone came in sight. If I saw anyone, I must wake him. I kept watch, but there was none came to disturb him in his repose. The day passed away, and we returned home at night, all well, as I supposed. But it seemed that the parson had his pickets out, and had got an idea that I was somewhere in the street. That night I had to leave my place at Mrs. Darby's, and went about a mile to a man's house by the name of Upson. He lived on a back street. I thought him to be a friend. I do not know but he was. But as I find that men now act in relation to slavery, I am inclined to think otherwise. The next morning the man went to his work. He was painting for the minister in Norfolk. Mrs. Upson sent me to the brook, a little way from the house, to fetch a pail of water. I did not like going into the street very much, but being taught by my parents to obey, I went without any words. As I got to the brook, a man rode into the brook with a cocked hat on. I did not much like his looks. I did not know who he was. Said he, "My boy, where is your father and mother?" I said, "I don't know, sir." "Where is your brother?" "I don't know, sir." "Where do you live?" "I don't know, sir." "Whom do you stay with?" "I don't know, sir." I did not then know the name of the man. He rode off, or rather I left him asking questions. He looked after me till I got to the house, and rode up. I asked Mrs. Upson who it was that came to the brook when I was there. She said it was Mr. Robbins, the minister. I thought nothing of it, for I thought all the people in Norfolk were our friends. In a few hours the woman sent me to the neighbor's to get some water from the well. It was a widow woman where I went to get the water, and there I found my father. He said that Captain Lawrence had been there, and told him that Mr. Robbins had sent his son to Canaan to tell Parson Thompson that he had seen one of his boys, and we must go in the woods, for he thought the parson would come out to look for me. Father took the water, and went with it to the house that I brought the pail from. The family where I went for the water I shall always remember with the kindest feelings. We have ever, from that day to the present, been on the best terms, and I believe 3 of them are living now. 2 of them live in that same house that they then lived in, and the transactions of this narrative took place 65 years ago. Their name is Curtis. End of Part 1.